wonderful humans, welcome back to the Bliss Bean. As you probably know, I love talking about productivity and organization. That's why the Bliss Bean exists. As we're all constantly changing and evolving, our systems need to evolve along with us. But for now, this is what I do to manage to-dos, schedule my days, set goals, feel in control of my life because I need to feel in control. So the tools that I currently use are the Notes app, Google Sheets, Google Calendar, TeuxDeux, and Trello. Pretty much all of my life systems are digital at this point. I think the only things I do on paper are journaling, brain dumping tasks, and then just like thought catchers. So I have a notepad on my desk to write down anything that pops into my head while I'm working so I don't get distracted by it. The rest of my life, however, is digital. So in this video, I talked about why I prefer digital planning systems over bullet journaling or any other kind of analog system. But we're not here to debate paper versus digital. We're here to see how Beatrice plans. So the first thing I want to start with is the weekly planning process. This is the bread and butter of all this. So in my notes app, I have a folder called planning, and I'll show you the rest of these notes later, but the first one is my weekly planning routine. And usually what I do, I copy and paste that into a new note so that I can check things off without messing up the order or worrying about unchecking all of them afterwards. I journal every morning and evening. So the first thing that I do is I skim through my journal, highlight anything that's important, and then from those highlights, I pick out accomplishments, challenges, or maybe like I wrote down a book that I want to read, so I'll add that to my to-read list. It's just like going through all of my thoughts from the week and just sorting them in the boxes that they belong in. So then I have this weekly review spreadsheet where I have a column for each week and then questions along the side to fill out. So the first thing I do is I just brain dump a list of accomplishments from that week, and then I pull out 3 of those that I viewed as the 3 biggest accomplishments. I just think it's nice to be able to look at the top row of this spreadsheet and see all of the big things that you've accomplished. So then moving on in the spreadsheet, I also write down 3 misses or challenges from the week. I take a look at the improvements and the priorities that I set last week, and did I accomplish those? If not, why? Did I complete my habits? How did I spend my time? And then it's time to focus on the next week. So as I said, I use paper for very few things, but I still use it for brain dumping. I just really like making a long list by hand and then physically crossing them off as I'm scheduling them into my planner. So first, as I'm working on this brain dump, I take a look at my monthly goals and then my 2020 goals. In my mid-year review video, I talked about some things that I'm focusing on for the second half of 2020. So I'll take a look at those and then write in my brain dump any steps that I can take this week towards them, any adjustments I might need to make. Then just like if there's anything on my mind, if anything's nagging me, I write that down. After that, I look at my calendar to see what events are coming up, maybe write down some things that I might need to do to prepare. So even little things like if I'm meeting up with a friend, then the night before, I might write down that I need to text them to confirm the time with them. Just anything that you can get down on the paper means you don't have to keep that in your memory, which clears up mental space for other more important things. After that, I use a trigger list. So the trigger list is a concept from the Getting Things Done system by David Allen. It's a list that's supposed to trigger your memory of any to-dos, ideas, etc., anything you might have forgotten about. So I used to use this little note card as my trigger list. It basically listed like the main categories of my life, like family, blogging, photography, chores. Recently though, I found Michelle B's trigger list. I don't have a direct link to that because she sends it as part of her newsletter, so I'm just gonna link to the newsletter page. But it was very comprehensive and very relevant to my life because she also has a YouTube channel, so I kind of used it as a... This is what it's like to be in the middle of a room makeover. So I used her list as a template to create my own very long trigger list. Most of these things will not trigger anything on a regular basis, like how often do you schedule dentist appointments, but once in a while that is something that you have to do. So constantly having that on your trigger list ensures that it never like slips your mind for a couple of years, because that's not good. So I think as I keep using this, I'll figure out some ways to shorten it and edit it, but for now, it is a very, very long list. Finally, for the brain dump, I take a look at my 2020 intentions. So if there's anything I can think of to add to my brain dump that will help me align my life more closely with the vision that I had for 2020, I'll add that. And then finally, everything is out of my head and I feel a lot better, a lot more organized about my week. Out of that gigantic list of things to do, I pick 3 priorities for the week ahead, as well as 3 improvements that I can work on, and then I start on scheduling. I'm someone who functions in weeks. Like I feel like my life is primarily segmented into weeks, so I need to have pretty much my entire week laid out before it starts. So the tool that I use for managing and scheduling tasks is called TeuxDeux. I talked a little bit about how I discovered this and why it changed my life in that bullet journaling video that I already mentioned. So when it's the start of a new week and I open up TeuxDeux, it usually looks pretty empty. It just has my repeating tasks. So I have things that happen daily like meditation and posting on the Bliss bean, and then weekly things like weekly blog tasks, organizing photos, weekly planning, reading. I then go over to Google Calendar and I take any events that I have this week and I make headers out of them. So for example, let's say I have a kickboxing class Thursday at 7. To format this, you just put a hashtag at the start of it, and then I write the event in all caps along with the time. I do this with all my events, and then throughout the week I can rearrange my tasks around my event. So like maybe I want to set a little goal of finishing editing my video before that class, and then afterwards I'll shower and cook dinner. Then I take a look at those 3 priorities that I have for the week, and any tasks that are related to achieving those priorities, I schedule those in first, and then I go through everything else in my brain dump. So I just type it into TeuxDeux, cross it off, type it in, cross it off. This is a very satisfying part of the weekly planning process. So it's hard to explain my process for deciding where everything gets scheduled because it's not like a step-by-step process or a set of criteria. It's very holistic, but I do consider things like batching similar tasks, for example. So if I have to write some thank you notes for photography clients, I'll try to sit down and write 3 at a time rather than spreading that out throughout the week. I usually generally try to schedule more difficult things like writing or planning videos for the beginning of the week because that's just when my brain is functioning the best. Another thing I happen to do is I use headers to separate out the sections of my day. So even if I don't have any events dividing up my schedule, I still want to create some structure for myself, which we'll be talking about more in the next section of the video. But the structure I create in Google Calendar pairs with these headers that I create in TeuxDeux, and I can drag and drop, for example. So practice Korean goes in my learning block, writing a newsletter goes in my immersive work block, meditation, I do that after lunch, so I drop that under that header. Throughout the week, at the start of each day, I'll rearrange everything in the order that I plan to do it in. So I really like to have like a clear plan of action when I start my day. Having this plan in place also allows me to stay really flexible because if something changes, then I already have like a framework to work with, and all I have to do is drag and drop and make adjustments. If you guys want to try out TeuxDeux for free for 30 days, there's a link in the description for you to do that. I also did a newsletter a little while back about how to set up your own planning system in TeuxDeux, so if you're subscribed to the newsletter, then it's already in your inbox. Otherwise, if you sign up for it now, you'll instantly get access to the archive and you'll be able to find that edition there. You'll also get like more than 40 other newsletters to read to keep you busy as well. So the link to sign up for the newsletter is also in the description. Okie dokie, so as I said, scheduling my events and time blocking my day happens in Google Calendar. I love Google Calendar. So my main calendar is this one that I have for events, and then this one I have for my daily schedule. So I have these separated out because if I go to my monthly view, for example, and I have my daily schedule on, it just completely clutters up my calendar. So I like to be able to separate it out like that. I also have this internet time calendar. This was something that I experimented with just very recently after reading Deep Work by Cal Newport. I'm still working on that, so it's not really a part of my system yet. I might not end up using it, but the main parts of my Google Calendar are the daily schedule and then the events. When it comes to the events, my color coding system is pretty simple. So in high school, I had tons of different colors for different clubs, but now it's just red for photography, yellow for fun events, coral for exercise classes, and then the default dark gray for pretty much everything else. So with my daily schedule, I have this kind of repeating template set out for myself with the time blocks that I normally use. And then at the start of each day, I edit them to fit whatever I have going on that day. I might create a block for a specific project I'm working on, delete a block, shorten a block. So for example, on days where I do an hour of reading, usually Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, I'll also shorten my Korean practice by an hour. So I just click and drag that. Alright, so I already showed you my weekly planning and review spreadsheet, but there's 2 other sheets within that document that I haven't showed you yet. So I have my monthly review spreadsheet, which is really similar to the weekly one. I log my time tracking data what went well that month, what didn't go so well, 3 lessons that I can pull from that month, my goals for the next month, and then an affirmation to focus on. And then this weekly focuses spreadsheet, this is something new that I'm trying, so I wanted to have a really simple way just to see what projects I have going on week by week or a couple of weeks into the future. So like maybe I know that one week I want to get 3 videos done so that the week afterwards I can really focus just on remodeling my room. This is a great way to keep tabs on that. If I think of like changes that I want to make, like to my routines or to my systems, but I don't want to overwhelm myself by making a bunch of changes in one week, you should definitely avoid doing that if possible. Then I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna try this change this week, and then next week I'm gonna try out this thing, and I'll put that in my weekly planning spreadsheet. So far I've mainly been using this to just think about the next few weeks, but you can also use this on a really long-term basis. So maybe like at the start of the year, you can use this to plan out when you want to maybe go on a big trip or do some big project. Okay, so now back to the Notes app. Like I promised, I am going to show you some of my other things in my planning category. So we already saw the weekly planning routine and we saw the trigger list. I also have my midweek planning routine. This is really short. It's just a quick check-in. I've got my monthly planning routine, and then at the bottom here, I wrote out kind of a mini trigger list with some areas of my life to think about when I'm trying to remember what the heck happened that month so that I can pull some accomplishments, improvements, and lessons from that. This is a lessons list. So this is something that I had in an old notebook, and I just wanted to digitize it so that I could throw away the rest of the notebook. I cut it down by a lot, so this is just a list of little lessons I've learned that I want to remember. So some of these are super random, like after I toured a newspaper with my school newspaper club, I wrote down that I realized I would not want to work at a newspaper as a future career, or that I am someone who does not benefit from naps. So if I really need a boost of energy, then I'm probably better off like drinking some caffeine or something. Recently, I reorganized the categories in my time tracking app, so this is just where I planned that out. I can probably delete this actually now. As I said, I recently read Deep Work, so I've been trying to work on having like start rituals for my deep work and then end of the workday rituals to just help my mind like switch off from that mode. And then finally, I have this to do someday list. So I've sorted this into categories. These are just things that popped into my head. They weren't so urgent or important that I immediately scheduled them, but I do want to take a look at it once in a while to see if there's anything that I can move from the do someday list to the to-do list and actually get them done. By the way, throughout this video, to protect my privacy, I duplicated my entire planning folder and deleted stuff that I didn't want the entire internet to see, so in reality, these lists are a bit longer than you see here. Okay, so the final big tool of my productivity system is Trello. I love Trello so much. I used to have my social media calendar on paper, and it was an absolute mess. I mean, I feel like if you're planning digital content, digital posts, then you can't use an analog system to plan them. It just doesn't mesh. So Trello is what I use currently for my entire content calendar, no matter if it's YouTube, Instagram, newsletter, etc. And I also use a separate board to organize my photography business. So for photography, I have a board where each card represents a client. So anytime anyone new reaches out to me, I create a new card from a template. The title has their name, the package they want to do, and the date of the shoot. And then within the card, I have any notes about the shoot, as well as this big checklist of what needs to get done throughout the entire process. As the client moves through different stages, like after they've scheduled their shoot, after we've done the shoot, after I've delivered the final photos and I'm just doing little follow-up tasks, I drag and drop their card to different columns so I can visually see like where everyone's at. Over here for the book column, I also sort them by date so that I can see which photo shoot is coming up the soonest and should be the biggest focus in planning. And then my blog content calendar. So I use this a lot more than the other one. I pretty much always have my content calendar open in a tab. I really don't use the column layout very much. I just stick to the calendar one. So with a free account, your Trello board can have one power up, and one of those power-ups is being able to see all of your cards on a calendar based on when their due date is. So in my case, that's when the piece of content will be published. And so it's super easy to drag and drop things around if things change. So for example, if a video gets moved back by a week, it's really easy for me to also move back all of those accompanying social media posts. For my color coding, I've got yellow for newsletters, purple for social media, and red for YouTube. And then I have green labels for sponsors. So if you expand these, it shows who the sponsor is. And then this dark blue label I made for anything that's related to my course, 21 Days to Productive Flow. It's so hard to wink. I'm not very good at winking. I use the description space to write out the caption for the Instagram post, an outline for my newsletter, and what my 5 recommendations in that newsletter are going to be. So it's really nice to have that all in one place, because if I think of something like, oh, I'm gonna want to mention something in this newsletter 3 weeks ahead of time, so I don't have to make a new Google Doc for it because I haven't started writing that newsletter yet. All I have to do is go to that card in my calendar and just drop it in the outline, and then I don't forget about it. I actually used to write out my entire video scripts within these cards, but then it just got to be too much. It was very clunky. So now what I do is this template card includes headers, so I can plan out things like, what will the title of this video be? What will I link in the description? I can capture any random ideas I might have about how I want the thumbnail to look, how I want to edit the video, etc., etc. And then I also use this calendar to plan out things that might happen on a certain week. So maybe I need to remember to film a week in the life video. So I'll just create a blank card, put that in the BTS column, and write film week in the life. I also do something similar for weekly blog tasks, but these are a bit more complicated. So I have a card on each Saturday, but then within that there's a bunch of checklists. So there are tasks that I do every week that don't change, like responding to emails, updating my media kit, checking analytics. And then throughout the week, if there are things that I think of, like updating some little thing on my website, then I'll add that as well for the upcoming week. I think that's everything. So if you're someone who's trying to decide between digital or paper planning, I've definitely had my share of internal battles trying to decide which one to commit to. But overall, I have noticed that whenever I take something from paper to digital, whenever I upload something to the cloud, in general, my life just starts to feel more organized and I feel more productive. I really like how flexible digital planning is, but I also really like how it all just lives in this intangible space that allows me to really separate myself from my work. So when my mind is in work mode, I open up my computer, I log in, everything I need is there. But when I'm ready to sign off, I can shut my computer and no longer be surrounded by to-dos and schedules, but I know that everything is stored safely there and I don't have to worry about it. So I hope seeing my systems helped you. Hopefully you can tweeze out some little tips to apply to your own systems. Let me know if you have any questions. Give this video a like and subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications, and I will see you next week. Bye!